Okay, all right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, April 20th meeting of the Carrboro Town Council. We'll start off here with having our roll call by Kathy.
Are y'all hearing that? No.
No.
Are you hearing the meeting?
Yes.
Okay, there's something going on. I think my video is playing. So confirmation we are live and going out. Okay, I think that's quiet. Okay, Mayor Lydia Lavelle.
Present.
Councilmember and Mayor Pro Tem Barbara Foushee.
Present.
Councilmember Jacqueline Gist.
Present.
Councilmember Randy Haven O'Donnell.
Present.
Councilmember Susan Romaine.
Present.
Councilmember Damon Siles.
Present.
And Councilmember Sammy Slade.
Present.
All right, thank you.
All right, great, thank you. And so Kathy, will you bring over our guest poet tonight? Again, it's April Poetry Month, and every Tuesday night we have a guest poet, members of the extended poetry circle. And so tonight we have with us Mr. Paul Jones to read a poem. Hey, Paul.
How are you?
Good, good to see you.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood here in Greater Carrboro. So this poem seems appropriate right now for spring, and for others it's called Ode to a Certain Feeling of Optimism. Russell says, I shouldn't trust it. I should know by now. Soon it will let me down. One more dent in a lovely old car. A scratch on my favorite glasses. A friend who doesn't make the right choices. Too much hot sauce, which I love, but should know the circumstances. Excess is its own reward, I want to tell him. In excess of hope, can that even exist? I hope not. I hope I can find a way to share this feeling, to say the next cup of coffee won't be burned. It will never need cream or sugar. That my parents are in a better place, their late pains having paid their dues, that they're allowed to enter whatever afterlife can afford them. Here's my certain feeling of optimism. I want to share it with all of you. I don't want to shake it. It stirs in me like a deep muscle flexing each time I pass it on. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. That was awesome. Thanks for being our guest. That was pretty cool.
Do we know who the poet was? Was that an original?
It was not an original.
We can find out some other time, I guess.
Yeah, Kathy, I think Paul sent us a link that included where he was getting that poem from. So Kathy can tell us in a minute where it was from. Okay, so next we have acknowledgements. And I have an acknowledgement that I wanted to make, but well, first of all, I think this is in no order of importance, but because I have several things to say, about our town, and also we received something earlier this week that I wanted to mention. But I think I would be remiss if we didn't first start out by just kind of expressing, I think, our all of our feelings about the George Floyd verdict today. It was a pretty awesome day in America. It was a sad day because it's recognizing what happened last year to George Floyd when he was murdered. But it's a good day in terms of justice, and in terms of awareness, and in terms of a little bit of hope, what it means for our country, I think. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything or not before I go on. Barbara, then Damon, then Randy.
So thank you, Mayor Lavelle, for mentioning that. So it's just been like a really emotional time, especially for Black folks in America. And really for all of us as we watch in real time, Mr. Floyd being murdered in the street. I was really edgy today, because I was just like, hey, it really, I felt like it could go either way, but I am just so grateful, grateful for his memory, his family, that justice was served to that police officer, and just hoping the very clear message, has been sent, as it relates to, violence at the hands of law enforcement, those who are sworn to protect and serve. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Barbara. Damon, then Randy.
And thank you, Barbara. Also, I thought it was important to say some things today. Obviously, Lydia. So thanks for making that space. And also, given what we have coming up on our agenda later tonight, too, around these issues of community safety and public safety. One of the things I've been thinking about this evening is the time back. It was a night back in November of 2014 when a whole lot of dozens and dozens of Carrboro residents gathered for a vigil in front of Town Hall. And some of us were there that night. And that was a time for folks to come together. It was a time for folks to say the names of Trayvon Martin and Jordan Davis and Michael Brown Jr. It was just a day or so after a grand jury in St. Louis had failed to indict the person who killed Mr. Brown. And so I've also been thinking about that night and about the remarks that our former colleague, Michelle Johnson, Council Member Michelle Johnson, gave that evening. And she reminded us, especially those of us who are white, about the importance of acknowledging, and not just acknowledging, but feeling angry about the fact that people of color, especially Black people, experience the weight of this day very differently and have to carry that weight every day. The other thing that Michelle told us that night was, I'm just looking at her statement. She said, another world is possible. She said, we can look closely at this mess we're in and figure out our role in it. How do we participate in it? Are we willing to dig deep and make sustained change? So I'm thinking about those words from Michelle, and just glad to be with each of you tonight while we try to do some little bit more of that work together.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Damon. Thank you for that. Let's see, Randy and then Susan.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Damon. Today was incredibly emotional, and just, I just want to say, yes, Damon, I'm glad you mentioned the 2014 vigil, and how from that moment on, I felt like Carrboro was dedicating herself to an in-depth review of what law enforcement and community safety and community engagement in community safety could look like. I find it poignant that this verdict comes on the very day that we're unfolding a resolution that Council Damon Siles and Sammy Slade and I worked on for over a year, just trying to make it the best thing we could make it. But more importantly, I think there's two things that I want to say. That one, I want to acknowledge Darnell Frazier, working with youth all my career, and just what it took for her to the courage to be an upstander. We talk about upstanders in community, people who do not stand in silence, and what it took from her to record, because without that recording, today would not have been as it is. I also want to say that while a guilty verdict on all three counts is, I think it's really an important step. It's not an end point. It is not, justice is not an end point. This is not an end point. This is a beginning. And I feel like, I feel like a lot of folks throughout this country and even globally are going to take this as a signal of hopefulness, to reimagine community safety and law enforcement, as I hope we're going to be doing going forward.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Randy. Let's see, Susan.
Yeah, thank you, Damon, Randy, and Barbara for your comments, Lydia for your comments. So, yeah, I just wanted to add that for me, one of the most poignant moments was the very beginning of the trial, and listening to 4 young women testify. 3 were teenagers, one was 11 years old, I believe, and talking about, one in particular talked about how George Floyd reminded, when she saw George Floyd, she also saw her father, her brother, her uncle. All of us are so vulnerable. And also listening to some of these young women, teenagers, talking about things that they wish they could have done. And they're carrying a tremendous guilt from this. And so, Damon, to your point, to Michelle's words, I think everybody is just so relieved by the verdict. I think mostly about young people. And I hope that especially these young people who saw this crime, this murder committed, I hope that they too will be able to know that another world is possible, that maybe today is a beginning where we have more just outcomes like this. And there is more of a sense of hopefulness, especially among our young people.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Susan. Anyone else want to, let's see, Jackie?
Just very quickly, like everybody, I was moved and cautiously heartened by today's verdict. One thing that struck me was, I work with young people too, and young people are not interested. I hear a lot of young people not interested in going into public safety because of public safety officers that do bad things and get away with it, and they don't want to be part of that group. I get that, I hear that. And so one thing I thought today was, as we're reimagining policing, maybe it's a new opportunity for young people who really want to do good things and who really want to help their community and serve their community, that maybe this will start to put the profession in a different light in their eyes, and we will begin to I think Carrboro has a great police force. We will begin to get people in policing all over the country who are there to do good rather than to get away with evil. So I found that very uplifting.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, Jackie. Yes, Amy.
Yeah, thanks, Lydia, for making this space, and I appreciate everyone's comments so far. I won't add too much more other than express a relief of stopping with this continued way in which our justice system has been incapable of seeing the obvious about how we treat our brothers and sisters, and I hope this is the beginning of a change in our being able to do that. But I also want to reflect on the reality that historically our country has gone through many phases of getting over the normal and rediscovering how to see each other, and that this is one of those moments, and for us to never forget that what seems normal can be very painful and this damaging to people, I think we have to constantly always be vigilant, and especially for those of us who are not affected by the system, it takes that extra effort to see what our other brothers and sisters can't help but seeing, because they're subject to that infliction of pain.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sammy. Thank you all. Thanks everyone for your comments. I knew that I just felt like we all would want to say something. Pretty memorable day. So the two other things I wanted to mention quickly. One was we got this kind of a news announcement. It was sent to all of us, I think, earlier this week from a person named S.Y. Mason Watson. And it turns out I know S.Y. She went to law school at Central, and I clerked for her uncle, Judge Johnson, who was on the Court of Appeals. Anyway, it was cool to reconnect with her. And she was sending out an announcement that Calvin Morrow Sr. had passed, and he was the last surviving member of the B-1 U.S. Navy Band. And so just by way of just a quick description of that band, the B-1 Navy Band consisted of 44 African-American North Carolina musicians who broke the Navy's racial barriers by enlisting at general rank. Before the band's formation, African-Americans could only enlist as messmen. In May 1942, the selected musicians assembled in Raleigh, North Carolina, and left for 9 weeks of naval indoctrination in Norfolk. After returning to Chapel Hill, the band fulfilled special assignments during their 21 months of service at the pre-flight school. Following this, they were sent out to Hawaii, where they remained until the end of the war, and then they returned to civilian status and became lawyers, doctors, teachers, professors, businessmen, and entertainers. And what I found was interesting was S.Y., I never knew this, but S.Y. Informed me that her father had been a member of the B-1 U.S. Navy Band. My judge actually stayed at their house when he would travel to this area every week for court. And I got to meet Uncle John. So that was kind of cool to learn about that. But in the announcement, it says that memorable times of this group have been spent in various locales: Chapel Hill, Carrboro, Beaufort, Durham, and others. So since they mentioned that, Susan, thank you for having me mention that. I think it's kind of cool to recognize that. Yes, Barbara, thank you.
So thank you for mentioning that. So there was an anniversary of the B-1 band a few years back. It was I can't remember exactly, maybe 4 or 5 years ago at Hargraves in Braxton, and I was looking in the book that we purchased. It's called The Forgotten First B-1 and the Integration of the Modern Navy, and I see a young photo of Calvin F. Morrow in here. There is a chapter dedicated to their time in Chapel Hill called The Best of Times. And there's a quote by the late Rebecca Clark that says, "All those handsome and talented young men." And so I saw that email, I was reminded, I said, hey, I got that book, that we purchased at that event. So it's just a really amazing book. And this is like some real history right here. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Barbara. Kat Lazorko caught that also, and she was thinking about doing a blurb about it. You might want to either pass on that book to her or maybe, I don't know, photograph some pages for her. She might find that really interesting as well. So thank you. All right, then the last announcement quickly, y'all. Mr. Manager, you gave us the news that our town received the Moody's rating again, maintained our AA1 rating, right?
Yep. Yes.
The highest of high quality. I think that's what you said it was. So
yeah,
very awesome.
Takes all of us.
Yeah, no, it does. Takes a village. All right. So I think that's it. And now we'll move on to announcement of upcoming meetings, Kathy.
All right. Thank you very much. And between now and your next meeting, here, let me pull this up. The Affordable Housing Advisory Commission will meet April 21st at 7 p.m. and the Board of Adjustment will meet April 21st at 7 p.m. as well. And those are the only two meetings between now and your next meeting, April 27th.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, Damon?
Just want to mention that next Tuesday, Randy and Anne Marie and I will be attending the Chapel Hill Transit Partners Committee monthly meeting.
Okay, all right, very good. Yes, Randy.
Yeah, and so just another reminder, Thursday is Earth Day, April 22nd, and at Town Commons, the town of Carrboro, Orange County, Climate Reality, and Present Day on Main is sponsoring an Earth Day food footprint food sale. It starts at 5, ends at 7. Come by, get some dinner. It's plant-based and it's earth-friendly food.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Randy. I was going to also say the Visitors Bureau Board of Directors meeting is tomorrow morning, so I have that. So, and before we go on to any public comment, breaking news, that poem was by Paul. So Paul did write that poem. I know he sent us a link to it. I never followed through to the link to see, to read the poem or to see it was his. So
He does have a way with words.
Yeah, he sure does.
And Lydia, can I just note one more thing real quick? You congratulated David appropriately on David and the staff's achievement with the bond rating. I think David, very humbly as usual, did not mention that this is, I don't know how many years in a row, many consecutive years, while David has been manager, that the town has maintained very, very good standing with the bond agencies. And just want to appreciate the staff for that work. This is not the first time that we get to celebrate that achievement.
Right. No, thank you. Thanks, Damon. Thanks for mentioning.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, so Kathy, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
Not for public comment. We have 2 people that have signed up for an item that's listed on the agenda later.
Okay, all right, very good. So let's go ahead and Mr. Manager, the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and members of the council. There are 6 items on the consent agenda. The first 4 items are the fire department monthly report, the police department monthly report, the stormwater utility monthly report, and finally the economic development monthly report. The 5th item on your agenda would increase the funding for the East Main Street redesign project from $43,500 to $87,500. And then the final item number 6 on consent, I just want to say that the Carrboro Tourism Development Authority provided $175,000 in COVID emergency loan proceeds. We loaned out $109,404, and this is a request to return the remaining balance of $65,596. Mayor.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Let's see, Barbara.
I don't know what's going on over here with this meeting. I'm sorry. So I just wanted to motion to move those items on the consent agenda.
Okay, Jackie, are you pulling one, Jackie?
Yeah, I'd like to pull 3 just for a minute, please.
All right, pulling 3. So Barbara, your motion is for 1, 2, 4, 5, 6.
Yes, thank you.
Second by?
I second.
By Randy. All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Susan?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Damon?
Aye.
Okay, very good. So number 3, Jackie.
Thank you. I'd want to encourage anybody watching this meeting or reading the minutes to please take the time to go in and read the report from stormwater. There's an awful lot going on, and there are things that I think can really help people with their own stormwater issues at home. I again want to recommend to people that they read through the amazing guide that our staff put together and the Stormwater Advisory Commission on. It's for homeowners and answering your questions, that has really good advice on how to manage stormwater in your own yard. That report, that guide is available through the town website. If you put in stormwater guide, it's actually under Public Works, but if you just put it in the guide. We also have several neighborhoods that are working to mitigate stormwater's impact on Bowling Creek. As you know, Bowling Creek is very, very endangered right now. Every time you go, it seems like there's more of the creek falling in. And so there are citizens working to deal with that themselves in conjunction with the town. There's also, I know this came up while we were working on the Arts Center, the Arts Center CUP. The Stormwater Advisory Commission and the staff are looking at upgrading our stormwater ordinance to make it more effective and to make it more proactive. So that's in the consent agenda, and it's easy, particularly for people who aren't attending the meetings, to kind of skip over what's in the consent agenda. And I get that time-wise, but please, if you're watching this from home and you have concerns about stormwater, please take the time to read that report. And I want to thank Randy Dodd for putting it together. Thanks.
Great. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Jackie. Do you want to go ahead and move the item?
And I move item 3.
Okay. And second by Damon. All in favor, say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Sammy?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Susan?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
And Damon?
Aye.
All right. Very good. All right, Mr. Manager, on to our next item. I can't hear you. Can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm having a little technical problems today. Sorry about that.
You're getting back in the swing. You had a
I
little
know,
patient.
then my internet wouldn't work and now I can't get the screen. But anyway, I'll calm down here in a minute.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that. The next item on your agenda is an annual update from our OWASA representatives. So Robert Morgan and Yinka Ayankoya are here to make a presentation to you and answer any questions that you might have.
All right, great.
I think I brought over most of the OWASA representation, but there's someone listed as 13367, and I'm not sure if that is that you, Bob Morgan? Do any of the OWASA representatives, do you know if that's ever been Bob's screen name, the 133? Can't see the rest of it.
Yeah, it's just 133. It's got a number 1 on it.
I'll bring it over. How about that? I'll just bring that one over. It's
They are.
the only one that I don't recognize at all.
Okay.
So let's see.
That's his phone number.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. So we have, looks like we have Yinka and Bob here, and then we have some other folks. See Todd, Raymond from OWASA. Good to see you all. There's Bob.
Yeah, sorry for that confusion. I've been waiting for 40 minutes.
Well, we don't make you come over until we come to the agenda item, but we weren't.
I know, it's just habit. It's just habit.
No, it's great.
I just want to thank you all for inviting us to present our annual update. Yink and I will provide an update, and Ray DeBose, the chair, and Todd Taylor, the executive director, are available to assist in answering questions and hearing your feedback. But Yinka Aikoa and I will give you a summary of a few of the items, and you can ask questions along the way or wait to the end, however you want to do it. The first thing we like to talk about is the long-range water supply plan. OWASA has been in the process of updating that plan. We completed our initial community feedback earlier this year. We spoke to the media, the public, and elected officials to get feedback. That feedback was presented to the board, and the board asked the staff to move forward and develop principles, guiding principles to use in evaluating the final alternatives that will have to be made in this plan. OWASA stands well right now for a few decades. However, we are vulnerable to extended or back-to-back droughts. But as we proceed with this plan, after we make a decision as a board, we'll get more community feedback and before a final decision is made. Any questions on that we can answer? If not, our next item is the fiscal year 2022 budget. Last year we were.
I'm sorry, I had a question, Mayor.
Sorry, Jackie, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Bob, it's good to see you, and I hope you're feeling well.
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good. Thank you for coming to join us. The last time that we were able to speak with the Owasso representatives, I think many of us, and not just our council, but other councils, expressed concerns about getting water out of Lake Jordan. And I had questions about why, if we spent so much money and time protecting the watershed, if we're going to take water from from a source that is not as protected as our watershed is. So you said that the board is looking at community feedback. Is that part of the feedback that the board will be looking at?
We had some of that feedback from the community, and so those questions were included in the report to the board.
Okay, well, do you think that those concerns, and I know it wasn't just our council, it was citizens and other councils as well.
Yes,
Will they
we'll take those
concerns?
Yes, we'll take those
under serious consideration, not just a line in the report.
Well, I won't be there, but I'm sure the board will take it very seriously.
Okay, and we'll be watching. Thanks, Bob, and thanks for all your work on this.
You're welcome. The next one is the budget for 2022.
I'm sorry, Bob. I'm sorry. Hang on just a minute. Sammy, is that a follow-up to?
Yeah, sorry, Lydia. Sorry, Bob.
You just don't want to hear about the budget.
Yeah, no, I just want to, thanks, Jackie, for bringing that up and reminding our representatives, because they weren't there, I don't think, during that meeting. And I just wanted to let you all know that we did have a legislative meeting with our representatives to the General Assembly. And I did let them know about Owasso assessing these alternatives. And one of them that ranks very highly is the direct potable reuse. And Craig Mayer expressed interest in learning more about this, because the main barrier that Owasso has for using that is that it's not currently allowed in our state. So I'd very much encourage y'all as our representatives to work with the board and making sure that Owasso is communicating with Craig, as he seems to be sitting on a committee that's pretty significant for getting those kinds of rule changes. So I just wanted to make sure y'all heard that and follow up. Hopefully Owasso can follow up with Craig. Thank you.
Thank you. For the budget next year, we're currently anticipating that water demand will return to normal because everybody will be starting to come back. Last year, we did not have a rate increase because we didn't feel that the community could take it on at the time. And because of that, we were not able to give employee raises, and we had to defer capital projects to subsequent budget years. Our current estimate is projecting a 5% rate increase for this coming year. That would raise the average monthly bill for a 4,000 gallon per month customer from $379 for a total of $79.46 for the 4,000 gallons. Prior to adopting the budget, a public hearing will be held on the proposed budget on May 27th of 2021. Glad to answer any questions on that.
Let's see, Susan?
Yes, good evening, Bob. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I have just one question on the 5%, the possible 5% rate hike. And will that be across the board, or will the lower income groups be exempt from the rate hike?
That'll be across the board. We have to treat all customers the same.
Is that under like state law or?
State law.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I would add that we're doing everything we can as an organization, I feel, to help people who can't afford their bills to pay their bills. The Care to Share program, but it seems like every other meeting, one of the board members brings that up, and so we're keeping an eye on that very closely. And if you have no further questions, I think Yinka is ready to proceed.
Yes, thank you, Bob. So as you're aware, for my agenda is the mortuarium on service disconnections being extended. And Orange County has extended that through June 30th. And OWASA has also deferred resuming standard billing practices for an additional 30 days after those notices to give customers with past due balances opportunities before we start resuming collection processes. Again, as Bob mentioned, the Care to Share program we have, that's one of our bill assistance program. Our website has been updated throughout the pandemic to include additional services that are available, including Orange County's housing helpline that has funding when they're available. We're grateful to our partners across the country for their continued work on providing available assistance to customers who are requiring bill assistance. Any questions on that?
Yeah, let's see, Barbara and then Susan.
Yinka, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good. So I just want to, it was just a comment. I see where OWASA is offering payment plans of up to 18 months to customers who are past due, but that's once you resume standard collection practices. So that would be after June 30th. Would that be after June 30th? After the
So yeah, our practice, I believe, if we're looking at the 30 days, giving them 30-day notices after June 30th, I believe that would take them to at least August 1st, right?
Oh, up to August 1st. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So does anybody have the number or a percentage of Chapel Hill, Carrboro, UNC, probably more Chapel Hill, Carrboro, that are like, I guess, like really behind? Is that a thing? I'm pretty sure there's some people behind, but is it a lot? Are people having a really rough time keeping up with the water bill? And do you have the numbers?
I don't know. I'll be happy. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah. Barbara, we've been tracking that. The last numbers we have, there's about 550 single-family residential customers that would normally be subject to our cutoff at this point because their bills have gone past due for 60 days. The average amount that is owed right now on those is about $350. And that's continuing to grow.
Yeah, that's a lot, for some folks, who don't make a lot of money. So grateful for Care to Share and the other opportunities available to help folks with that water bill. Thank you, Todd and Yinka.
All right, thanks, Barbara. And then I have Susan and then Jackie.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Yinka, for your comments tonight. And I have one question, one comment. So the question is, let's go ahead and assume that this 5% rate hike is approved. For people who have bills, they owe bills from some point prior during the pandemic, when they go to pay back those bills, those past due bills, will they be paying at the old rate or at the new 5%, at the rate with the 5% hike in it? Does that question make sense?
Yeah.
Yes. They will only be responsible for paying what they currently owe. So it would be just the rate was based on the amount of water they used and the rate at that time.
Right. And then just one quick comment. I wanted to follow up on what Barbara said. I too am really, really grateful for the Care to Share program. But this is also a reminder that there's just going to be, it's just going to be really hard for a lot of people in this community to be climbing out of the pandemic. Because we're going to get to that point where you're not only paying for the current water bill, but you're going to need to be chipping away at these $350 in these prior bills. And and on top of that, they're going to have utilities that are past due, some cases rent that's past due. So it's a reminder for us all that lots of families are going to have a heavy load over the next few months. And I hope that we can all, continue to work together to try to lift that as much as we possibly can. Thank you for all of your good work.
Thanks, Susan. Let's see, Jackie.
Thank you. This is follow-up question for Todd based on Barb's question. You said single-family residents. I know that there are people who live in apartments who get billed through a different mechanism, and one that we're not necessarily happy with, and I know Owasso isn't necessarily happy with. What's happened to those people when they fall behind on their bills? I'm thinking of people who live in apartment complexes where they're billed through a third party. What's going on with those people?
Yes, that's a difficult question to answer because we just honestly don't know. If the apartment complex has been paying their bill, then that is the extent of Owasso's relationship with them. Unfortunately, yes, we do know that there are people behind that meter that are living in the apartments that are maybe having trouble with paying all of their bills, and certainly wish there were things that we could do, but we just honestly don't know. We don't know if there's an apartment and it has a single meter there that's metered by Owasso, but it serves 100 folks behind there. We don't know how many of those might be struggling.
Because that's a lot of our lower income families live in those apartments. Is there any way to find out? And is there any way that this moratorium and help can extend to those people? Because I really think that we would find a high percentage of those people are in lower income brackets rather than higher. And I'm real concerned about them.
Yes, unfortunately, the moratorium is only for Owasso customers. So we don't have any control over those properties that might be managed by others and what their practices are. It's difficult for us to have any real control over what's happening to those customers, unfortunately.
Is there any way to find out? I mean, of getting in touch with the complexes that have those meters and asking them? Is there? Because I'm worried about those people. I think we all are.
Certainly we could reach out, but we would be relying on what information they would be willing to give us. And I would be concerned that might not be the best, the best results. We may only hear about a few. And if we don't have a solution in place for those, I don't know how willing they would be to work with us.
I wish that in the future and I know this is an area of great concern to both staff and board at Owasso, and that I'm not alone in being concerned about this. I sure wish there was a way we could get out of that system, because it just seems like another system that, there's a saying that it's expensive to be poor. And I think that's another one of the systems that makes it expensive to be poor. But thank you. And I know you're concerned.
Thanks, Jackie. Let's see, Damon and then Sammy.
Thanks, Lydia. I really appreciate, Jackie, you raising that question about families in apartments, people living in apartment complexes. It sort of reminds me that the whole time I've lived in Carrboro, I have actually never paid an Owasso bill because I have always lived in multifamily dwellings. And I know this has come up for us in many years on the council, as Jackie mentioned, that we just don't have a good handle, as Todd said, on where there may be a problem there, right? And we've even seen issues of, these third-party billing agencies and so on taking advantage of that sort of curtain that they're existing behind. I'm wondering, this might be an opportunity for David to remind us, if David is able to still be on. He may be still having technical difficulties, but maybe at some point David or Rebecca's staff can remind us whether the contribution that we've put into the Emergency Housing Assistance Fund with the county will help cover utility expenses. I think that it does, but I don't remember exactly how. And this is maybe another opportunity for us to be reaching out to folks living in multifamily complexes, letting them know about that program and what they may be eligible for if they're having trouble with back utilities.
Yeah, thank you, Damon. David?
Yeah, I believe that we do utility assistance as well as rental assistance, Damon.
Okay, that's great. So, I mean, I think, again, sort of piggybacking there on Jackie's comments, the importance of getting the word out to folks, especially living in multifamily dwellings, around utility assistance might be a good opportunity for community outreach.
Okay.
Well, multifamily, but also, David, of those 550 single family, the ones that are in Carrboro, I don't know, Todd, how you get word, if it's even doable, but to get word out to these folks that do of this, because we have money. I mean, a lot of the entities have money that they can apply for and use for put right toward their utilities. So there might be some coordination that could go on with that.
Sort of getting that. I mean, the whole point of that money really is to do what Susan mentioned, is about lifting that weight off of people's shoulders, right? And we have the money to do it. Let's use it.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll I'll report back. I get you.
Okay. Yeah. That's awesome. Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right. Let's see. Sammy.
Yeah, that was essentially what I was going to ask too. We shouldn't have people extending out without being able to pay. And we have the money that CARES Act funds is precisely for this. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the increase, there's potentially money for infrastructure, and I assume an increase is necessary to cover those rising costs for new equipment, whatnot, that OWASA has. And so my question has to do with, if that infrastructure plan, which I understand has a lot for water utilities, passes, would we still need to do the 5% increase?
So I don't know who, Todd or whoever wants to answer that question. I think that special districts such as OWASA might be slightly differently situated than municipalities, but can you address whether you all are able to apply for any of those monies now, or maybe the infrastructure one?
Yes, Mayor, that you have pointed out the key issue for us on a lot of those funds is they are flowing to municipal governments, and unfortunately we can't access them, but we've been working with the county and the towns to apply for the funding, and then try to work it so that they could give that money to us for our needs as well. So we are in coordination with the municipal governments on that. However, we can't apply for it directly, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but you can indirectly. That's
right.
Sounds like, okay, good. Yeah. And then in terms of if for whatever reason we're not able to cover these people who are in the moratorium, the question of, I understand you can't waive fees, but can you indefinitely have a moratorium in place?
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. Is that what you're saying, Bob?
Yeah, I think that's the same thing as waiving fees, but it's certainly a question we have to give to our legal counsel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not an issue because we could probably pay that with the CARES funds. But if for whatever reason, it would be something worth exploring, I think.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Sammy. Okay, so I think that's is this more about the same topic? I see Barbara and then Jackie.
So is this the end of the report?
No, I think that but Nika's still going.
So there's more. So maybe
just these are only comments on this item we're on right now.
Okay, so I'll wait with my question then.
Thanks, Barbara. Jackie.
I would just like to ask Todd if you could tell us when we could expect a follow-up on reaching out to people in multifamily dwelling units to see about to see who has a need for us to help them with utility payments, and could you get back to us in a week or so and tell us how that's progressing and what the plan is to do that?
Yes, it may be that we may want some assistance again from our local government partners who may know folks that have reached out asking for assistance that are maybe not OWASA customers, but they are through a third party service. So we may ask those folks to see if they have some numbers. We can also reach out to the customers contacts that we have in our database to see if if they're willing to share any information. Those can be challenging as well because sometimes that's a property manager or something like that. It's not necessarily someone that's handling the billing service for the utility piece of it. So anyway, we will explore that and get back to you with on what we've been able to turn up so far and how we might proceed.
Okay, I think I would encourage you to work with our staff as well, because they have some insights into that. And I'd like to push a little bit and ask with in the next 2 weeks, we could please get a report back. I'm asking our staff as well as yours, if within 2 weeks we could get a report back on the plan for doing that. I would really appreciate that if my colleagues agree with me on it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Jackie. All right. So is that the end of discussion on that item? So if so, I think, Yinka, we can.
Okay. So now we're going to talk about energy management and our solar PV. We already have some in service on our OWASA-owned land on Barry Andrews Road. We'll be expecting to get additional ones on our main campus on Jones Ferry Road. So collectively, these will generate clean energy per year to equivalent of over 40 homes. Through our lease agreement with private partners and rebates from Duke Energy, we're able to install these systems for no additional cost to OWASA customers in their first year of service. In future years, the project will be spending less on lease payments than we save on our energy bills. And OWASA is honored to be a recipient of funding from the Orange County Climate Action Grant Program for additional solar PV systems at Cane Creek Reservoir to lessen the purchased electricity needed for that area. Mm-hmm. Any questions on that topic?
Let's see. It looks like I see Sammy.
That's great news, Yinka, and it's really exciting that OWASA is engaging in solarizing. And I just wanted a sense of context. I know you all have an energy efficiency and plan, but in terms of the goals that OWASA has, maybe not necessarily now, but if you could follow up with how this action gets you, to what degree does it get you to your goal on combating climate change?
Let's see, Todd, yes?
I can take that question. Our goal right now, or at least since the inception of our energy management program, was to reduce our energy use by 35%. This final solar installation at Cane Creek Reservoir would achieve that goal. So we would have met the goal of our original intent with our energy management program. Obviously, we're going to update that and hopefully strive for more. But this is a great accomplishment when we finally get this last solar array in.
That's really exciting. Thanks. And I just encourage our representatives on the OWASA board, given that all the jurisdictions, I think Hillsborough is still working on theirs, but Chapel Hill just announced their climate action plan. It would make sense for OWASA to have one that sets a goal aligned with what the science says. And I would encourage y'all to, I'd be happy to talk to you about what Carrboro's goals are for you to be thinking about that for OWASA too. Thank you so much for your work on that.
Great. Thank you, Sammy. Okay, Yinka, you can continue.
Okay. So we're going to talk about our upcoming board appointments. So OWASA has a couple of openings this year from each of the jurisdictions. Carrboro has one opening with Bob eligible either for reappointment if he chooses. And so his seat is up. Chapel Hill has two and Orange County has one. And while the board members in our community engagements effort, we're trying to attract participants who are of diverse applicant pool. Information has been posted to our website and includes more information on what's involved within our board membership. And we would like to thank the town for sending out the OWASA board members recruitment notice on March 31st. And since OWASA does embrace diversity and inclusion in everything we do, we would like to encourage all interested applicants to apply to be a board member of OWASA. And our board does address a wide variety of issues, but the only true qualification needed is just genuine commitment to serve in the community.
Great, thank you. I have a question if you've gotten through all of your items that you're going to talk about. Go ahead.
I have one more.
Okay.
But I don't know if there was any questions on this one.
I don't see any hands up. Okay.
So then the last one is diversity and inclusion. So OWASA staff provide diversity and inclusion updates to the board 3 times per year. The annual one is September. It's more comprehensive and outlines the progress that includes key accomplishments and takeaways. And then our interim reports are provided January and July. January 2021, the updates included recent and upcoming diversity and inclusion work. We had members from each of the diversity groups presenting us information on key accomplishments. So the diversity leadership group provided information to the changes of employee performance review system, and that added diversity and inclusion competencies to the evaluation process. Diversity leadership group provided employees training on these changes that are coming up. Our diversity resource group provided an update to their work towards revising our mentoring program. They provided surveys and questions for upcoming diversity inclusion surveys of what they wanted to have. And then the third item that they had was quarterly meetups where employees watch a video and have discussions on current and pertinent diversity and inclusion issues. Mm-hmm. Our diversity recruitment group highlights their support on the development and research for an apprenticeship program and the work with the resource group to improve the mentoring program. This group also discusses the upcoming supervisory training on the recruitment process and omitting biases. And again, OWASA always values diversity and acknowledges the benefits it provides our organization and community. And we consider our diversity and inclusion efforts to be ingrained in OWASA's culture. And like all of our endeavors, we strive to continuous improvement on that. And that
okay, awesome, thank you. Anyone, any comments about that item? All right, great. So thank you for the report. I just had one question about the facilities, the recreation facilities. I know last year there was a kind of strict measures put in with COVID, and when I visit the site, it seems like this summer the same protocols are in. And one of the questions I had was that there were certain time slots that people could sign up, and I wanted to know if there ever were more applications than time slots for folks. And then I had a follow-up, Todd, after I get that answer.
Sure. Yes, we've definitely had greater interest than there was capacity. The board is actually considering this Thursday night this week about our schedule going forward for our recreation programs. And we are, just to give you a preview of that, we are suggesting that we increase the capacity at both facilities.
Great, thank you. Yeah. I mean, as a recreator, I know we last summer we also were very cautious about opening up our parks, but now they're almost all of them are fully open except for large gatherings. And I understand that's kind of what you're trying to watch. And I guess as the weeks go on, you can kind of gauge that. But certainly, if we get people out and about in those facilities, they're awesome. So we want to be able to do that safely. Yeah. So thank you. Okay, so getting back to Barbara.
Does anybody else have a presentation, or is it just Dinka and Bob?
I think that's it. We're going to other questions now, Barbara.
Okay. So I wanted to go to the development of a new strategic plan. I was reading particularly a part that talked about feedback to include and consider diverse perspectives, which I appreciate. So I wanted to ask the question about how OWASA plans to elevate and enhance community engagement. I know COVID, has us all moving, differently and more creatively. But I want to know about communication going forward, or potentially in another situation like this, hopefully not, especially as it relates to the historically marginalized and underserved folks that may not be, plugged into the web, or social media. So I was wondering, had there been any conversation about that? I know you have a communications manager, I believe it's Blake Hodge. So I was just wondering if there was anything in the works as it relates to that. Thank you.
I'll take that, Barbara. Yes, we're actually working on the process right now. The board will see that draft process on Thursday night, and we do have an extensive community engagement component to this strategic plan, and definitely are making are going to put a lot of emphasis on making sure that we try to reach out and touch as many points as we can throughout the community, and get as much feedback as we can as we're going through that strategic plan. But yes, we are working on that process right now, and sure invite any of you all to take a look at our agenda this week. That process is laid out in pretty great detail, and if you've got any comments, we'd certainly love to hear those.
Okay, so I'll check it out. Thank you, Todd.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Barbara. Other questions for our OWASA folks? Let's see, I see Sammy's hand up, and then Susan.
I've got two questions. One's a follow-up to Barbara's. Thank you, Barbara, for raising that. We just yesterday, hot off the press, got our equity plan progress report from the efforts, the interjurisdictional GARE. And one of the things that is in there is description of what the community engagement is through that process. And I would very much encourage, as part of your consideration of the process in this coming meeting, to look at that component. It does include a spectrum of public participation. And I think it's very meaningful in that there's one way of getting input, which is just like surveying. And then there's another one that's a lot more empowering of the community. And it really gets to how to break out of our institutional ways of doing things to really do something different so that it serves the historically marginalized in a meaningful way. I very much, I'll forward that to, or maybe I'll forward it to David. David, you forwarded it to us. Maybe you could forward it to Todd. Sorry for the complication of how to make that happen. The other question I had is in terms of fleets. A while ago, there's interest by OWASA was exploring how to make use of methane waste, and the one idea was to have municipal and institutional fleets potentially be able to use that. And we're about to be converting, I think, in a very significant way to electric vehicles, but it would be valuable at this time for us to be able to assess OWASA methane as an alternative alongside electrifying fleets. There's federal support for it. There's also local interest, and the economic conditions are such that that it's a good opportunity for us to be looking at this now. So I raise that as you update your climate plan, have that conversation with staff of the various jurisdictions to make sure we're on the same page and don't miss an opportunity if it is an alternative that's better than others. And lastly, I just wanted to also raise an opportunity that may exist as we all have climate action plans. OWASA owns a lot of property that has a lot of trees on it, and this question of carbon sequestration and to what degree the trees on those properties could be credited to jurisdictions. I know it's OWASA's, but there may be ways in which we could be thinking about how to meet our joint climate action goals if we can recognize that that is potentially preserved trees on OWASA's land. So a couple of points there. Thank you for your presentation and your being here.
Thanks, Sammy. Let's see, I think Susan had her hand up.
Yes, thank you, Lydia. I had a comment that's actually not related to the report. And so if anybody else has questions, comments on the report, I'll wait. Then I'll jump in. I just wanted to say thank you to Yinka, Bob, and Todd in terms of your flexibility in working with the Arts Center in providing the overflow parking at their new building on Jones Ferry Road. And it's a really great example of community collaboration. And as Sammy mentioned, it's a joint effort on climate action, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, let's see. Any other questions from anyone? If not, I'm looking here to see what our action is. I think our action might be good just to have a motion to receive the report. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, we have the report. I don't know if anyone wants to make a motion to receive the report. Kathy, do you think we should do that?
I don't think it's required at all.
Okay. All right. Just was an update from our reps. Y'all, thank you for being here with us again tonight. It's great to see you all. Everyone from OWASA, not just our reps, staff also. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. So
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All righty.
Thank you for having us.
Okay. Take care. All right, Mr. Manager, on to our next item.
Okay, Mayor and members of the council, the next item on your agenda is a resolution establishing a community safety task force. Mayor.
Okay. So I think what we do here is I think I turn it over to Damon, right? I mean.
Yeah. Thanks, Lydia.
Yeah.
I
know Damon and two of you all worked on this, put this together. So go ahead and take it away.
Just have to put my other glasses on here so I can read. Yeah, thanks, Lydia. And yeah, I should just from the outset say with a lot of gratitude that the work that I've been able to do together with Randy and Sammy on this over the past, as Randy mentioned earlier in the meeting, over the past many months, we've had some really productive and gratifying conversations and done some good work together, I think. And so that's what's reflected in the agenda packet today. I do have just a handful of slides to share just to get us grounded and sort of remind community members who may be listening in, like kind of how we got here and what it is we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to share my screen briefly to, like I remember how to do that. Kathy assured me I would be able to share whatever it is I'm doing here, so I will try my best. That showing up for folks?
Yes, great. You got it.
Great, thanks. I'm also going to stop my video because that's going to just distract me. Okay, so again, just want to shout out to both Randy and Sammy for all the great work we've done together on this. And this is kind of, I guess, the proposal we're bringing together, and it's reflected in the resolution that you have in your packet, which offers a brief background and then a charge for this proposed task force. Just a few slides here to talk a little bit about where we started, some of the preliminary work that we've done to get here, review very quickly what we sort of settled on as what we thought made sense for the structure and charge of this task force, and what we think are probably the reasonable next steps. So as you all remember, last June, we adopted a pretty lengthy resolution on next steps in racial equity and public safety. And the final section of that resolution was expressing the council's intent to establish a public safety task force with an interest in, as you see highlighted here, developing new approaches to public safety beyond policing, considering issues related to law enforcement practices, alternatives to assigning certain kinds of responsibilities for human service needs to our public safety professionals. And of course, what I think will be really important is our coordination with the county and our other neighbors on some of these issues. And we also, of course, recognized at that time that any work we do in this area has to, first of all, advance racial equity, has to be grounded in our community's demands and needs, and be informed by our engagement with community organizations and other groups who have been working on these issues well before and for much longer than we have. So in terms of preliminary work over these past many months, spoken with each of you on the council, each of you at least twice formally, and certainly in other ways informally over that time, and gotten a lot of really great feedback. It started out actually with some brainstorming sessions that we all had together, and that really formed the basis for our thinking around what direction it made sense to go in here. Also had some really good conversations with our counterparts on councils and other jurisdictions nearby, and some not so nearby. And I'll talk a little bit about the work that some of those jurisdictions are also doing, similar work to what we're proposing. Spoken to a number of local advocates who are working in criminal justice issues, criminal justice reform, human service provision, and other related issues. And then, of course, as we all are existing in this Zoom world now, we have found many opportunities to attend webinars and other kinds of sessions on these and many other topics in local government. And I certainly have attended my share of those, as I know some of you have over the past many months. So also just as a way to remind folks kind of the path that we've taken to get here, just reviewing some of the work we've been doing in Carrboro for a while now, including our ongoing efforts to achieve our bias-free policing goals. And this is work that really started in earnest probably since back in 2015 or so. That work is ongoing and is reflected in the June 2020 resolution that we approved last year. There's also, of course, our core membership in the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, or GARE, which, as Sammy reminded us, we got a really great update about from Anita Jones-McNair. And also, we've talked a lot about recently this increasing amount of coordination that we're doing with Orange County and with our neighbors on providing for human services needs. Housing assistance is the one that really kind of stands out, I think, especially during the pandemic. But certainly coordination on issues around criminal justice diversion programs, the debt relief program that we have been talking about a little bit, and just generally in pandemic response. And then most recently, the council, as you all know, formed the Racial Equity Commission, which we'll hopefully be appointing members to pretty soon. And I'll just quickly mention some of these other jurisdictions that are doing some related work. First, as many of you may know, in Durham, they have formed what they're calling a Community Safety and Wellness Task Force. And what's interesting about Durham's approach is it's a joint task force, including the city of Durham, the county of Durham, and Durham Public Schools. And it's quite a large group and has quite a broad charge that reflects the various interests of all of those governing bodies. Up in Hillsborough, Mayor Weaver several months ago appointed a mayor's task force, which she's calling her Mayor's Task Force for Reimagining Public Safety. That I got a little bit of an update from Mayor Weaver a couple of days ago, and she confirmed that that task force is continuing to do its work, and so they're in progress. I should mention that the Durham one, they just recently, in the past few weeks, appointed the members to their task force, so they're getting started. As I'm sure you're all familiar with, Town of Chapel Hill has also formed in the past several months what they're calling their Reimagining Community Safety Task Force. which is doing some great stuff like holding listening sessions with the community and some other stuff. And then finally, there are other jurisdictions around the state doing some related interesting work that I think we can learn from as we undertake our own work. And one example that comes to mind recently is in Buncombe County. They have started a new program where they're calling their community paramedicine program, which is a kind of a step along the way to doing something like what's done in Eugene, Oregon, which is called, some of you may be familiar with the CAHOOTS program. It's essentially a way of dispatching crisis response for crisis situations that don't require necessarily a police response. And that's been going on in Oregon for a few decades now. Buncombe County is stepping into that water now to try some new approaches. So when we talked about, when Sammy and Randy and I started thinking through kind of what does this task force look like? What makes sense? We kind of settled on what we thought would be a good way to go. And that, first of all, we, of course, were thinking of this as an ad hoc committee with a limited timeline. We settled on a 12-month timeline with the possibility of extending that up to an additional 6 months. And then in terms of model that we use, this is actually language that Randy shared, the way that she thinks about some of these examples that have happened in Carrboro over the past several years for these kinds of task forces, what she called a cornerstone committee. And some relatively recent examples of that are our local living economy task force, which did its work back in the early 2000s, as well as more recent than that, several years ago, the initial formation of the affordable housing task force, which led to what is today our Affordable Housing Advisory Commission and our strategies and goals and strategies document. But that originated in this kind of this task force that was appointed by the council. And so what we imagined is a task force of this kind that would structure its work around a series of teach-ins or shared learning sessions with experts and with community members on specific topics. Membership of the task force, as you see in the packet, the resolution in your packet with the charge, was the idea is to have 5 to 7 Carrboro residents who have content area expertise and or lived experience in areas like the criminal justice system, human services provision, social work, public health, and related areas. And then we also imagined there being 2 to 3 council members appointed to the task force. Not surprisingly, I think at least a couple of us, Sammy and Randy and I, are probably interested in continuing and being engaged in this work. And so it's no mystery why that number appears there. And then finally, a staff resource team to sort of assist in the work of the task force. And the members of that team, of course, would be designated by the manager. But we imagined that it made sense to have leadership from Housing and Community Development, the Police Department, and Rec and Parks serving in that role. So in the packet is the resolution with the draft language for the charge. It describes the background for the task force, the purpose of the task force, its structure, which I just reviewed for you, as well as the timeline, which I also mentioned. I'd sort of spare you in going through any great detail of that language. You have it in front of you in the resolution. Although I will point out one proposed change that was made, that was suggested over email late this afternoon, and I'll take a look at in just a second so you don't miss that. But first, just in terms of thinking about next steps, this is April 20th, 4:20. Town Council hopefully tonight will establish this task force and approve the charge and the resolution. Get into the process with the clerk's assistance in accepting applications for membership to the appointment to the task force. And then really the task force will need to get to work designing and holding these shared learning sessions that we talked about so that by next spring or so, depending on when we appoint its members, the task force can provide its update to the town council. So as I mentioned, the language, I don't want to go through all the language of the charge because you have that before you in the resolution that was sent around. But one change that was suggested in the purpose section was to just tighten up some of the language around the school-based programs. And instead of what's there, you can see it's struck from the text and replaced with some text here, school-based programs that have been shown to increase safety and security. I think this gets at what some of the council members were suggesting, and it also importantly, in my mind, maintains our consistency with the recommendations from the Campaign for Equity, for Racial Equity in Our Schools, which was one of the documents that we referenced in our June 2020 resolution on these issues. So I'm happy to go back and look at the other pieces, paragraphs of language from the charge that's been proposed. But unless there are no questions, I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Great, thanks, Damon. I want to make a quick comment and then I'll go to questions. One comment was the Durham model is interesting. Of course, Durham City is almost 85% of Durham County, so it kind of makes sense. Durham City County in the public school system. And then the other comment I wanted to make in terms of this task force kind of model that we have used in years past. Of course, we also had the New Horizons Task Force. That's how I first got involved.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, another one that was about a year and a half or so that served a similar purpose as to what we're seeing here. All right, so let's go on to Jackie and then Barbara.
I want to thank the three of you for the hard work you put into this. And I also appreciate your touching bases with the rest of the council as you were going through the process. So I think this represents a reflection of all of us as put through your hard work. So Randy, Sammy, Damon, we all thank you a lot. Damon, we had talked some in our conversation the other day that I think people would be interested in knowing. As we were talking about all the different organizations that currently do work that kind of fits into this model, and that the plan is to have those organizations do teach-ins, so that Volunteers for Youth and Dispute Settlement Center and Club Nova could all talk about the things that they do that kind of interface with police and our criminal justice system. And I really appreciate that. I think people need to know that that's part of the plan, and that this will be, the task force certainly, but that the task force isn't going to operate in a vacuum, that it's going to operate with input from what they learn from these teach-ins and what they learn from other community members, that it's really a community-based endeavor. And so I appreciate that design. I just want to make sure that people understand that that's what this is about. So thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. That's a critically important point, and something that certainly Sammy and Rand and I were thinking through as we thought about this teach-in model or shared learning session, right? Is the idea is that this task force is a relatively small group of people, but that its work is going to rely on the fact that, as you said, Jackie, a lot of this work is being done in our community in a lot of different ways by both long established organizations and relatively new organizations, serving different parts of the community, providing different kinds of services, building community in places where that kind of support and lifting up of communities is needed. And I think you're absolutely right that one important role of this task force is to be learning from the work that's going on already, and seeing what ways there might be for us to support that work and enhance it, make it even better.
Great.
My last question was, how do we plan on appointing people to the task force? Are we going to take applications for the task force, and so each of us would encourage people to apply? Is that the plan?
Yes, and so one of the things that, as you know, Jackie, when you and I talked, and certainly when we had conversations with other council members, I encouraged folks to be thinking about folks in the community who are interested in this work, who might have a role to play. And it can be task force members or people who want to be part of these teach-ins or shared learning sessions who have some expertise to share or experience to share. I think there's a lot of roles to play. Yes, I do. I think, and I assume, Randy and Sandy can weigh in. I assume that I'm saying this correctly, that we certainly imagined an open application process, just like we do for any of our advisory boards. And then the council will select members from among those applicants.
Because I think it'll be real important to get a wide range of people with a wide range of views on this, and in order for it to be something that is able to get community buy-in. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jackie. Let's see, Barbara.
So shout out to again to Randy, Sammy, and Damon for all your work on this important task force. Certainly it's just kind of weird, that we're doing this tonight, on the day, that the verdict was handed down. So just a couple of things that I wanted to say. And the first being, I'm going back to our resolution on next steps. And I'm really on this, and I'm sure everyone else is too, but I'm going to say it anyway. Just really centering the racial equity piece here, especially in light of recent and past events. I'm just really centering that, and let's not lose sight of that. Secondly, so I saw, and this is in blue. I don't know who. If this is, this might be Councilmember Romaine. I don't know who it is. So the task force may also consider issues related to the town's ongoing efforts to achieve its bias-free policing goals, as well as the recruitment, training, and retention of the town's public safety employees. And what I think about when I think about recruitment, training, and retention, recruit and retain a racially equitable workforce. We want our public safety employees to kind of look like, what our community is. So I don't know how or if it's appropriate to add that in, but certainly if you're talking about recruitment, training, and retention, I see racial equity being centered there. Lastly, so 5 to 7 residents appointed by us who have professional expertise and or lived experience in the criminal legal system. And, I like that, and that's fine. But let's make sure that that's balanced off and that we don't have more one than the other or completely, professional, which I don't think we would do that. But, that's a balance that we might want to, think about, as we recruit people and ultimately appoint them to this task force. Just really good work, and I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara. Anyone else with comments? Let's go to Susan.
Yes, I'll be brief. I too want to just thank Damon, Randy, Sammy for working on this resolution. I know it's been far more than just the resolution. It's many, many months of conversations and research, and tonight we enjoy the fruits of your labor. So not only is it significant tonight, the timing in terms of the George Floyd verdict, but I have to say it's also somehow it feels so perfectly timed with Paul's poem tonight called Hopefulness. Because this task force does represent hope that even though our policing, I think we all agree we have so much respect for our police department and the policing that they do. There's always opportunities to make things better, and I think that will come through this task force. Which brings me to this point that with Hillsborough having a task force, Chapel Hill having a task force, and now Carrboro tonight, we'll be having a task force. I'm hoping this will open up opportunities where we can learn from each other. We'll all be trying different things, and those will have different impacts and different results. And we're all in sort of an experiment, our own experiments, where we'll be learning and eventually being able to incorporate what's working in some of these other areas into our own new community safety efforts. So anyway, that's all to say thank you all very much for all of your hard work on this, and I'm really excited to be able to vote in favor of it in a few minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. I appreciate that point. I think, when we talked, and I remember, Randy and Sammy and I were sort of juggling around with language to find language that really fit what we were trying to achieve in terms of the model, right? Randy had kind of geared us toward this language around teach-ins, right? Because it sort of hit on this note of like this shared learning experience, that we're here to sort of learn what's happening in the community, what exists today, what could exist in the future. And we have to be learning from each other to make that happen. In terms of learning from other jurisdictions, I see that as a really important part of it. And in fact, I see one of the benefits of us taking a slightly different approach in terms of the model of our task force is that as you see in the other jurisdictions, each one of them looks kind of very different, the way that they're doing their task force, right? Hillsborough has the mayoral task force, it's focused on a set of specific issues. Durham's is quite wide-ranging. It's a joint task force. I think even taking these different approaches in the different jurisdictions will allow us to learn things in different ways, perhaps. And I find that appealing as well. So thanks for your comment about that. Yeah, that's it. And I did want to make sure that, in moving this resolution, that we are understanding that that includes this tweak to the language that I showed on the screen earlier. So moving approval of the resolution with that change and including the changes that were sent around this morning in the blue text that Barbara mentioned earlier.
Great, thanks, Damon. Let's see, I see Randy's hands up. So Randy, maybe your comments, they'll include a motion. So
Yeah,
that was a motion from me.
all right, motion by Damon, second by Randy.
yeah. But before
Randy, go ahead.
I want to comment. So I just want to say, and this goes with when Damon summarized just a moment ago. One of the things that this process has made very clear to me, because yes, Sammy, Damon, and I met several times, and we had many conversations, and we really wordsmithed this. But more than that, what became very evident to me was that the three of us had, and we never actually said this, but when looking at the slides this time, Damon, it became very clear that the three of us have an enormous belief in our own community and the engagement, the authentic engagement of people in our community who want to do the best that we can with our own model of community safety. So that really came through when I saw it this time, that it never really jumped out. And that's because we're at a point now where we can start to see, we can get the 360 view. So I just want to say that in sum, it feels like Carrboro, and it lets open the door for whoever is appointed and the different roles that will be engaged with the task force, for those folks also to experience that sense of building with community. So I just want to second the motion and thank you all for all of your all's part in this endeavor.
Great, thanks, Randy. Good comments. Let's see, Sammy?
Yeah, just real quick, I want to thank the council for giving us the opportunity to work on this, and thank Damon and Randy for putting it together, and really want to acknowledge Damon for kind of being the leader amongst us to really wordsmithing and reaching out to y'all. As y'all noticed, he checked in, and I think he's really led in a exemplary model for how to work as a council in this kind of work. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sammy. That means a lot. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Sammy. Damon did talk with all of us about this a few times, and I know it was a labor of love, but I think we ended up with the result we all really appreciate. So, all right, we have a motion on the floor by Damon to accept this resolution with the amendment that we saw this afternoon, a little different from the packet, and a second by Randy. So all in favor?
Also my amendment.
Oh, the one from this morning, the one from early this morning, right? That Barbara had.
Mine was just now. I didn't do anything this morning. I'm sorry.
Specifying racially equitable.
I'm sorry, yours was the one right now. I got it.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Just to make sure that Barbara understands I want to make sure we're being responsive to Barbara's comment. Inserting the words racially equitable before the words on recruitment, retention, and recruitment, training, and retention.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I assume we'll see it again. or is this is pretty, so we're approving just based on what I just said, which is recruit and retain a racially equitable workforce, and putting racially equitable before recruitment?
Well, I'll read it to you
Or-
now, the change that I made based on the language that you just now used. The task force may also consider issues related to the town's ongoing efforts to achieve its bias-free policing goals, as well as recruiting, training, and retaining a racially, help me with this, Barbara.
Recruiting and retaining a racially equitable workforce, or recruit and retain a racially equitable workforce.
Public safety workforce.
Or
Right.
a public safety workforce. Yeah.
As well as recruiting, training, and retaining a racially equitable public safety workforce.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
That's really important. Thank you.
All right, thanks for making that clear for me and for us. Okay, so motion by Damon, second by Randy. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, say aye. Randy? Damon?
Aye.
Yeah, Randy, aye. You mouthed it. You were on mute, so.
Aye.
All right, Sammy?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Me, aye. Barbara?
Aye.
And Susan?
Aye.
All right, very good. So we're on our way with that. Thank you again, y'all.
Thank you, David. Woo!
All right. So, Mr. Manager, on to our last item.
Okay.
Hey, guys,
Mayor-
we're getting ahead of ourselves here.
I know.
We're gonna actually get to go to sleep at a decent hour.
Don't
Watch
jinx
the
it,
TV.
Jackie. Don't jinx it. All right, go ahead,
Don't,
Dave.
yeah, don't jinx it, right? Okay, Mayor and members of the council, the last item on your agenda is a request to set a public hearing on text amendments to establish requirements for an EV charging station.
Okay,
And
is there someone doing the presentation?
someone from planning, Trish or Tina, probably.
Oh, it's Tina. I brought over Trish.
Okay.
And we do have two people that want to speak on this item, Mayor.
Okay, they want to speak on the request to set the public hearing?
That's right. I believe that's correct. It was Bruce Sinclair and Tim Turner.
Okay.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Trish is certainly welcome to stay. If you don't mind, I'll open up a short slide presentation just to walk us through the text amendment, and then I'll open it up for questions or discussion. So I'll share my screen right now.
Thanks, Tina.
Huh. Success?
It's coming. Yeah. There we go. Okay.
Okay, sorry, weird delay today. Okay, so we all know the title. This is a request to set a public hearing for a text amendment related to EV charging. And I'm grateful for two members of the EAB who were involved in the drafting of a memo, which led to this draft ordinance to be part of the conversation tonight. So just going through it really quickly at the most basic level, what's before you tonight is a potential new requirement that would involve requiring EV charging stations and then EV ready infrastructure for projects moving forward that would involve either a new development or an expansion of an existing development where there are more than 50 parking spaces that are required by ordinance. So I think there was a question of whether this was just for town developments. I think our understanding is the way it's been presented is this would be for any development, whether it was a private project or a town generated project. The draft ordinance has some new definitions, just to make sure we're all talking about the same thing, and that includes a green vehicle. It has requirements based on the percentage of overall spaces, and so this is for the new charging stations as well as the EV ready station, so to speak. It also speaks to signage as well as pavement markings. So I'll just go through these definitions really quickly. It speaks to the 3 levels of charging stations, level 1, 2, and 3, which have to do with their
their power, so to speak, their voltage. The one of particular is level 3, which is considered kind of the fast charger. Level 2 tends to be the standard for these types of requirements. And I apologize that I was having a spacing issue, so this is kind of small, but I'm paraphrasing just to give you the gist of the key elements. And again, this identifies that 3% requirement, at least 2 spaces, and these would be separate from what we would consider kind of a green vehicle, which would be a something like a battery and gas operated vehicle. One of the EV charging spaces would need to be ADA compliant. And again, I'm pointing out that these charging stations would have to provide a level 2 charging capacity or greater. We would need to, there's a requirement for signage, pavement markings. These would have to comply with the standard MUTCD standards. And so there would be signage related to the charging station as well as informational signage helping to direct people to where they're located in the parking lot, as well as perhaps a QR code for other information that would be of interest to folks using those types of facilities. There would also be a requirement for EV ready stations, so installing the infrastructure, if not the full parking station at this point. There's been some questions about maybe including charging stations for bicycles, so I just tried to throw some images to make my presentation a little bit more interesting. Seriously, this does show some potential charging stations for scooters and a solar station. I'm not necessarily sure if that would be a requirement, but certainly something to consider moving forward. I think perhaps of more interest was trying to get a grip on what types of costs would be involved in setting forth this type of a requirement. This is a dated series of costs. This comes from 2015 in this great little website I found from Boston just today. But what is helpful, I think, is that it gives you a sense of scale. I think it gives you a sense of what types of cost differentials are between these 3 levels. And I suspect our EAB folks can speak to more current prices, but it does give you a sense of the difference between the 3 levels. My understanding, and others may know more and can correct me, but that setting up a bicycle charging facility would be a much lesser amount of voltage that would be needed. So that would perhaps be even less left of the level 1. So I will stop there and open it up for discussion. There is a resolution in your packet to go ahead and set a public hearing for the middle of May, as well as referring it to Orange County Planning Board and the 2 most relevant advisory boards, the EAB and the TAB.
Okay, thanks, Tina. Y'all, I think before we have any comments, why don't we go ahead and hear from our 2 members in the audience. Bruce and Tim are both in the audience and want to speak to us. Is that right, Kathy? Kathy, are you able to hear us? All right, let's see. Let me see if is anyone else able to bring over either Bruce or I don't think I am.
Sorry, Mayor, I'm bringing him over. Sorry, I was talking and it was muted still. Sorry.
No, that's okay. No worries. Yeah, go if you would go ahead and just bring them over, and we'll hear from them. So we have I see Bruce and I see Tim. So how about let's see. Bruce, if you want to, I know you both are here to speak on this item, soft 3 minutes, but go ahead and talk to us about this item. We know that you're kind of behind it, so feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, we're aware that this isn't really a public input session. We're just basically here to address any questions the board may have with regard to the origins, the goals, or what we intended to achieve with this proposed ordinance. I know more of the background, and Tim knows more of the technical side of the issues.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. And Tim, happy to hear from you also, but you're correct tonight. What we're doing is, setting the date for the public hearing, but interested in any comments that you might have for us as well.
I think Tim is
Bruce,
on.
are you finished?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't know if Bruce had further comments, or should I go ahead?
You can go ahead, Tim. Bruce was basically just saying that he's here to serve as a resource. Perhaps you are too. What we're doing tonight, is of course setting the public hearing. So if you'd like to add anything for us, we'd appreciate it.
I do want to clarify, and thank you, Tina, for that presentation, and also to her and staff and legal for researching all this. To be clear, this requirement for infrastructure would hold for new parking of any size. And then with lots of new parking of over 50 spaces, then the requirement to actually build a certain percentage of those be charging stations would kick in. And yes, it was meant for parking from any source, be it municipal or private. Did want to give you a little feedback because this has been in the works for a number of years, and so we've formally been asking petitioners if they would be willing to abide by these, what we were calling a proposed draft amendment. And the feedback's been very good. In fact, no one has said to us they thought it was unreasonable or weren't willing to do it. And we've had some noteworthy commitments to actually go ahead with this, including the Lloyd Farm development, which is probably the most significant addition of parking in the private sphere that we've seen. Just wanted to say that there's also a incentive for retail businesses to provide this parking, because it's been shown that customers who come and charge their vehicles tend to stay longer in the retail spaces. And so it can be argued that there's a financial advantage even to the people that would need to abide by this. Also, I was in a panel at the UNC Clean Tech conference several years ago, and it was on EV, and I asked a company that provides charging stations about what sort of initiatives were appropriate at the municipal level, and that what we have advocated is pretty much in line with what they were suggesting as well. And part of the motivation is that it's much easier to put the infrastructure in before you pave the parking than afterwards when you have to dig everything up to put wires in. So it's ultimately a cost saving if we're hoping to do this at any point. Yeah, that's about it. I just want to mention my term as chair of EAB has expired, and I was actually chair for 3 years. And so I want to thank council for the opportunity to be on the EAB, and look forward to working with all of you in future endeavors. I do happen to be on the task force for the comprehensive plan. So we'll be seeing more of you, and you'll be seeing more of me, I guess. Yeah, so again, we're here basically to address any questions about it. I guess one thing I'd like to add is that I think there's a range of approaches to climate action, and also in the ongoing discussion about what's an appropriate level of parking for Carrboro. And I feel like this fits in a nice area of reasonableness where we're trying to promote or reduce our carbon footprint by providing the opportunity or making it easier for folks to use electric vehicles in the town without placing a restriction or trying to in any way limit the use of cars, which is a separate point of discussion. But I feel like this is just pretty much a positive without any negatives that we can see.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you, Tim, for those comments. And Kathy, we can keep Bruce and Tim in here maybe while we chat in case there's any questions that we have that come up. But so let's go to Damon first. Yes.
Don't really have any questions, Lydia. Thank you. I'm very excited that we'll be hopefully referring this to the advisory boards and setting a public hearing. And just really wanted to thank Bruce and Tim for, it's not often we get a couple of advisory board members to show up at the time when we're setting the public hearing to kind of give us the background and their involvement and their thinking behind why we should be moving in this direction. So it's really useful to have you kind of complementing the staff's presentation with that perspective. And Tim, I'll just say special thanks to you, and I'm really glad that you're engaged in the comp plan, and look forward to you continuing to be involved with that.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Damon. So if there's any, I don't know if others have comments, but so again, our resolution tonight is to set the public hearing for May 18th, and then this resolution will be referred to Orange County and the Planning Board, of course. The tab, the EAB, those are in the resolution. So let's go, Damon. I think you already talked, right? So Barbara, then Jackie, then Sammy.
Oh, so again, thanks to Tim and Bruce for coming in case we, had some questions about the background. It looks really good to me. Good stuff here. Good positive change. And I just wanted to move attachment A, but I don't know. I think Jackie may have she may have a question, but I was just going to move attachment A. Thank you.
All right, let's see. Thank you. Let's see if we have a second before we go to Jackie, or if okay, Randy seconds it. So we have a motion and a second. Okay, let's go to Jackie.
I want to make sure that this includes not only commercial developments, but residential developments. So if it was an apartment complex or a condo complex or a new housing development, that we can also ask that they have somewhere in there, it could be at their clubhouse, it could be in the parking lots, that there be kind of communal charging stations built into those as well. Would we be able to include that in this?
Yes, the way it's written now, the requirement is based on the total number of spaces. It doesn't speak to the use.
So even though, like, say in a strictly single family development, that the parking spaces in that development are generally what's in people's driveway or in front of their house. So it would include like a single family residences as well, correct? We may want to add a clause somewhere in there that says commercial and residential, just so it's clear, and that it's clear to developers coming in and to build something. I just want to strengthen it.
Okay.
Would I be able to add that into the motion?
So to be clear, Jackie, what you're saying is to require it even in a development that has single family homes, to require that in every home.
No, not in every home. I'm saying, most single family, not multifamily. And multifamily, certainly, it wouldn't have to be for every home, but it would be X number. Say you're building an apartment. I can't pull a number out of my ear right now, but that for every 20 units, there has to be one charging station.
Right.
But then if it is a housing development that is single family homes and doesn't have any multifamily homes in it, I can't right now off the cuff come up with what the formula would be, but most of the single family residential units have, developments have a clubhouse, or there's some kind of public space in there. And so for those, it could be, for every X number, I don't know what the magic number is, of single family dwelling units, there shall be X number of charging stations for cars and X number of charging stations for bikes or scooters. I think is I'm excited that we're going there. So let's go all the way, see if we can strengthen.
Okay. All right. Thanks. We have Sammy and then Randy.
Thanks, Jackie. I think that's a great idea. I mean, maybe it's a 20% of single-family homes in a development.
No, I don't mean the homes have to have it.
Right. Yeah. So
I mean that there has to be some place in the development. So for every 20 homes, there has to be a charging station at the, at the clubhouse, or, down by the, I don't know where it would be, or that they could create a space to have a charging station if there's not a clubhouse. So it wouldn't be every 20 houses have it. It would be that there would be a readily available, communally available charging station for.
I appreciate that. I would also like to hear from staff on whether we could also include, if it seems like if 20% would be 5 houses or more developments, because 20% of 5 is 1. So requiring 1 house to have at least EV ready. It's something I'd like to hear back from. I recognize that's not what Jackie's asking, but it's something that I have an interest in. And I mainly just wanted to express gratitude to Tim and Bruce for bringing this up with the EAB 3 years ago, and appreciate y'all's patience. I'm very grateful for your sticking with the process and being here tonight. And I hope we are inspiring you to continue being in town government. But yeah, thanks a lot. Y'all are very persistent during the EAB meetings, reminding us about having presented this, and here we are tonight. I appreciate y'all's work.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Sammy. Let's see, Randy.
Bruce, Tim, you're a sight for sore eyes. I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you. Thank you for being persistent, and thank you for stepping up and advocating. My question is for Tina. And my question is, as I read through this material, one of the things I'm wondering, can we include EV stations at our parks? Because I'm thinking people park at our parks to watch games, and they're there for a considerable amount of time. I just think that we have some space at parks and parking lots that we could, retrofit and put in some EV stations. Wilson comes to mind, Anderson certainly. Anyway, and so that's first part. And the second part is that I would hope that with this attachment A, one of the things that we could do is draft a letter to the Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools, encouraging the school district to put in EV stations in their parking lots, because I don't think that exists. And having taught in the district for as many years as I did, if I had an EV vehicle, I would love for the car to be charging while I'm at work. So I'm putting that out there, because unless we push the school district and get them engaged in what we're engaged with, they may be oblivious to this effort. So, Tina, my first question is about parks, and the second is to Lydia about sending our resolution to the school district.
Well, I want to hear what Tina has to say, but if we pass something like this in our district, I don't know if it covers the schools, but then if a school's building Carrboro, it seems like that might be something that might fall under our land use ordinance. I don't know, but let's hear from Tina, I guess.
So I have, I'm happy to facilitate reaching out to, our Recreation and Parks Director and others regarding the parks. I have to say, I seem to recall that Laura Janway and her work with the Volkswagen grant did look at some of the parks as potential locations for charging stations. And one of the challenges was the fact that they're not open 24 hours. So That's not a requirement here in the town as it was for the grant, but it's just something to consider about somebody potentially leaving their car there. And I think they're actually gated, and that the gate might actually close, and that could be an awkward situation. You know, maybe not so much at Wilson, but perhaps at Anderson. So that's just something to think about if that's something that we want to pursue.
Also, in addition, Chapel Hill is also working this ordinance through their system at the moment. So
Okay.
if you would like to team with them or get a joint letter to the school board, that may be possible.
And Tina, so my question about the school board, is that their decision? It's not something that would fall under, it could fall under our land use ordinance?
I think I might defer to Nick or to Trish on this. I mean, I think we could certainly add that as a requirement, certainly for a new school, you know, adding it as a land use requirement. Going back and retrofitting it where there's funds involved, that might be a slightly different question.
Yeah, no, I don't mean retrofitting, but for example, if the Morris Grove Middle School ever gets built or something like that, I mean, what we pass would apply to schools that are built in our jurisdiction in the future, correct?
The way it is written now, yes.
Yeah, okay, good, thank you. All right, Randy, does that answer your questions, those comments?
Yeah, but I also, I would love to see us kind of push the school district to move in that direction, since they would, or the county pushing the schools to do it, because the retrofitting would fall in their domain.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would advocate that.
Okay, all right, very good. Okay, any other comments here? Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. We have, let's see, Sammy and then Randy. I mean, Sammy and then Susan.
Just Susan was first, but it's a follow up to Randy. Sorry, Susan, real quick.
Okay.
Randy, in the Climate Council, we can share that suggestion, and it's this kind of effort that we like to share at the Climate Council to inspire other jurisdictions to follow suit. So that may be a good venue to raise it.
Good idea, Sammy. Let's see, Susan. Yes.
Okay, so it's 9:02. I'm going to keep it short. Tina, thank you for your presentation, and Bruce and Tim, thank you for your longtime advocacy on these charging stations. I'm just curious if how other cities, towns deal with the enforcement in terms of cars going into charging spaces with charging stations that they're not electric cars. How are are the police issuing citations? Are you just kind of looking the other way? How do you monitor this?
Tina, or Bruce, Tim, any data on other jurisdictions that have done this? Bruce, I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
Not off the top of my head. I would think the police could probably not enforce anything on the private property, but they may be able to do so on any municipal or school property.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Jackie, is your hand back up?
Yes, I just want to make sure that I'm just asking people if they could agree with me on including residential in this. I'm not quite sure how we would word it. I would like to see it be, Tim, did you have an idea of how to do that?
I just wanted to say, we hadn't considered single family dwellings, but I like the ideas that, the 10 minutes we've been discussing this, that of all these different jurisdictions, including developments with single family homes as well as schools and parks. And so I think I'm glad we came, and it's been productive. You're not only hearing from us, but you've expanded our vision, in this short space of time. So to me, it sounds great. Maybe at the neighborhood level, to have the charging station, something like that. Now, to the question of the enforcement, it seems to me you'd need an ordinance that makes it illegal to park a normal vehicle in a charging space to start with. After that,
and I think our ordinance does address that. So, so I guess let me come back to Tina with this question that Jackie has. So Tina, you're getting the general gist that there is some support from a couple members here to consider a way to require either, charging stations within a development, a residential development that's newly built, be it, in some common area or something, or to perhaps look at requiring a certain number of the homes that are built in a development to, I guess, be EV ready. I mean, I think that was when we talked about, right? So is that something that if we moved this along to public hearing, is that something that could be, I guess, researched and brought up or shared as part of the advisory board, presentation, and then when it makes its way back around to us, we could gauge some interest in that, perhaps even have some language around something like that. Can you give us your thought on that?
Yeah, we can certainly explore that. I mean, I was looking just today at some other jurisdictions, and there's not as many here in North Carolina, but there's some elsewhere that we can look at and see if they have examples, just to give us a sense of ratio. And we can use that as a starting point. We can certainly kind of run a concept through the advisory boards and bring something back to you, and you can include it if you'd like. And if we're not quite there, then we can move on without it.
Thank you. I'm kind of wondering if, I hope we don't bump up against some building code thing or something with this EV requirement. That's one question I have. But anyway, it'd be something for you to explore. So I appreciate that. Okay, so any other comments? I know we have a motion, we have a second. Sammy, yes.
I just respond to Susan's question about enforcement. Staff very helpfully included a bill that's in the General Assembly, and it includes both for private and public, and there's a penalty up base or a floor of 100, but in this bill, it allows local jurisdictions to increase that penalty, and it's enforceable by state, federal, or local police.
Thanks, Sammy. That's where I saw it. I knew I saw it. I was thinking it was in our ordinance, but it was that additional bill. So yeah, thank you. Oh, we have a motion and a second. If there's no further conversation or questions, all in favor of the motion say aye. Randy?
Aye.
Me? Aye. Sammy?
Aye.
Jackie?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
And Damon?
Aye.
And Susan?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Very good. So that moves on, and have the public hearing on the date mentioned in the resolution. And y'all, I can hardly believe it. It's like 9:08. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
By Barbara. All right. Second by
Second.
everyone.
Everybody.
Randy. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, y'all.
Aye.
See you next
Thanks,
week.
Tam. Thanks, Bruce.
Night.
Bye, y'all.